"Sir, would you accept a flower?" said the little beggar girl to the sad millionaire at the cemetery, not knowing that this gesture would change his life. The autumn mist hung low over Sterling Hills Cemetery, wrapping the solemn gathering in a ghostly embrace. Alexander Montgomery stood motionless before the elegant silver urn, his usually commanding presence diminished by grief. The 52-year-old CEO of Montgomery Enterprises hadn't spoken a word since the ceremony began, his steel-gray eyes fixed on the vessel that supposedly contained his beloved wife, Catherine's ashes. The who's who of New York's business elite moved around him in a carefully choreographed dance of sympathy, their designer shoes crunching on fallen leaves. Their words of condolence felt hollow, rehearsed, just another networking opportunity disguised as compassion. Alexander barely registered their presence, his mind replaying the last conversation he'd had with Catherine 3 weeks ago. "I need to tell you something important," she had said, her voice uncharacteristically urgent over the phone. "But not now, not like this. Meet me tonight at our spot in Central Park." But Catherine never showed up. Instead, Alexander received the call that would shatter his world. There had been a terrible accident. From the corner of his eye, Alexander caught a flash of movement. A small figure darted between the mourners, drawing confused glances from the assembled socialites. A little girl, no more than 8 years old, weaved through the crowd with surprising agility. Her clothes were worn and patched, her shoes held, together with duct tape, but there was an unmistakable determination in her bright eyes. The security guards positioned discreetly around the perimeter shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to intervene. The girl had been hovering at the edges of the ceremony for hours, watching and waiting. Now, as the last of the mourners began to disperse, she made her move. "Sir?" Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it cut through Alexander's fog of grief like a beam of sunlight. "Would you like a flower?" Alexander turned slowly, looking down at the child. She held out a simple wildflower, its petals slightly crushed but still beautiful. Their eyes met, and in that moment something shifted in the air between them. The girl's expression changed from hesitation to quiet certainty. "Your wife," she whispered, glancing nervously at the security guards who were now moving toward them. "She's alive." Before Alexander could process her words, the girl opened her other hand, revealing something that made his heart stop. There, nestled in her small palm, was Catherine's wedding ring, the custom-designed piece he had commissioned for their 15th anniversary just 6 months ago. The unique inscription inside was unmistakable. "My North Star always." "How did you?" Alexander's voice cracked as he reached for the ring with trembling fingers. The girl took a step closer, speaking quickly now as the guards approached. 3 nights ago, under the Bridge Street overpass, a fancy car stopped. A lady got out. She was scared but trying not to show it. She gave me some money and this ring, said to bring it to her funeral and tell her husband she's alive. Doctor. Richard Jensen, the family's longtime physician, materialized at Alexander's side. "Mr. Montgomery, you shouldn't listen to this nonsense. This child obviously stole the ring. Security, please remove her." But Alexander wasn't listening. His mind was racing, picking apart the details of the past 3 weeks. According to Jensen's own report, Catherine's body had been found without any jewelry after the accident. The security footage from their estate had been corrupted that night. And the body. The body had been identified through dental records and documentation, but he had never actually seen it. "Wait," Alexander commanded as the guards reached for the girl. His voice carried the authority of someone used to being obeyed without question. The guards froze. "What's your name?" "Sophia," the girl answered, lifting her chin with a dignity that seemed far beyond her years. "Sophia Martinez." Alexander studied her face intently, searching for any sign of deception. Instead, he found only earnest determination and something else, a familiar spark of intelligence that reminded him painfully of Catherine. Making a decision that would change multiple lives forever. He turned to his assistant. "Call the car around. Sophia will be coming with us." The Montgomery mansion loomed before them, its limestone facade catching the last rays of sunset. Sophia stood in the marble foyer, her worn backpack clutched to her chest like a shield. Everything, Around her spoke of wealth and privilege, from the crystal chandelier overhead to the priceless artwork adorning the walls. Yet her eyes were drawn to a simple silver frame on a side table containing a photograph of Catherine Montgomery. "She has kind eyes," Sophia said softly, studying the image. "Like when she found me under the bridge." Alexander watched the child closely, noting how she carried herself with a quiet dignity despite her circumstances. Her dark curls were tangled but clean, and though her clothes were worn, they had been carefully mended. This was not a child who had given up, despite whatever hardships life had thrown her way. "Mrs. Reynolds will show you to your room," Alexander said, gesturing to the housekeeper who had appeared silently at his side. "We'll talk more after you've had a chance to rest and eat something." As Sophia followed Mrs. Reynolds up the grand staircase, Alexander retreated to his study. The room still held traces of Catherine, her favorite throw draped over the leather armchair, a half-finished novel on the side table, her reading glasses perched atop a stack of environmental law journals. She had always been passionate about environmental causes, though she kept that part of her life surprisingly private. Alexander pulled out his phone, dialing a familiar number. "James, I need you to look into something for me. A child named Sophia Martinez, approximately 8 years old, likely homeless or in an unstable living situation. And I want everything you can find about Catherine's movements in the weeks before the accident." While he waited for his head of security to begin the investigation, Alexander reviewed what he knew. Catherine had been acting strange in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, distracted, almost nervous. She had been making frequent trips to their lake house, claiming she needed quiet to work on an environmental impact study. But when he had checked the house after her supposed accident, he found no trace of any work materials. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Mrs. Reynolds entered, carrying a tray with coffee and a concerned expression. "Sir, about the child. She's cleaned up now, and I've given her some of your niece's old clothes that were stored in the guest room, but there's something you should know. When she was changing, I noticed bruises, old ones, the kind that don't come from playing rough." Alexander's jaw tightened. "Thank you, Mrs. Reynolds. Please make sure she eats well, and call Dr. Sarah Chen for a discreet house call tomorrow." After the housekeeper left, Alexander turned to his computer, pulling up news archives from the past month. Something wasn't adding up. Catherine's supposed accident had been remarkably clean, no witnesses, minimal damage to her car, and a conveniently corrupted traffic camera. The body had been quickly cremated, allegedly at the request of Catherine's father, Franklin Pierce, the powerful CEO of Pierce Global Investments. His phone buzzed with a message from James. "Preliminary findings on Sophia Martinez. Mother passed from illness 2 years ago. Father currently incarcerated for public intoxication and assault. Child has been off official radar for approximately 6 months. No current guardian on record." Alexander's thoughts were interrupted by soft footsteps in the hallway. He looked up to see Sophia standing in the doorway, now dressed in clean clothes that hung slightly loose on her small frame. She held something in her hands, a small worn notebook. "Mr. Montgomery," she said, her voice steady despite her obvious nervousness. "There's something else your wife gave me. She said not to show anyone but you, and only when we were alone." She stepped forward, holding out the notebook. "She wrote something inside. She said you would understand." Alexander took the notebook with trembling hands, opening it to find Catherine's distinctive handwriting. "My love, if you're reading this, trust no one, not even family. Follow the butterflies. I'm sorry I had to leave, but I had no choice. She found me first, the little angel with the wildflower. Keep her safe. She's the key to everything." Dawn broke over the Montgomery estate, painting the sky in shades of lavender and gold. Alexander sat in his study, surrounded by stacks of financial records and surveillance footage, his tablet displaying an email from his private investigator. The preliminary findings were disturbing. Large sums of money had been transferred from Catherine's environmental foundation to offshore accounts days before her disappearance. Dr. Sarah Chen's arrival interrupted his research. The pediatrician had been Catherine's closest friend since college, and her discretion was legendary among New York's elite. After examining Sophia, She requested a private word with Alexander. Physically, she's undernourished but resilient, Dr. Chen reported, her expression carefully neutral. However, I'm more concerned about what she's been through emotionally. She's remarkably mature for her age, Alexander. The kind of maturity that comes from surviving things no child should face. Alexander nodded, thinking of the bruises Mrs. Reynolds had mentioned. What do you recommend? First, stability. She needs to know she's safe here. Dr. Chen hesitated, then added, and there's something else. She mentioned having regular conversations with Catherine at a women's shelter downtown, said Catherine would visit every Thursday afternoon to read to the children. This was news to Alexander. Catherine had never mentioned volunteering at a shelter, though it aligned perfectly with her character. Which shelter? Hope Haven on 23rd Street. But Alexander, Dr. Chen lowered her voice. I've served on their board for years. Catherine wasn't on any of our volunteer lists. A knock at the door prevented further discussion. Sophia stood there, dressed in a simple blue dress from the clothes Mrs. Reynolds had provided. Mr. Montgomery, can I show you something? Alexander followed her to the garden, where she led him to Catherine's prized butterfly sanctuary. The glass structure housed hundreds of specimens, Catherine's passion project for the past 5 years. Sophia walked directly to a specific blue morpho butterfly mounted in the center display. Mrs. Montgomery said to tell you to look behind the blue wings, she said confidently. Alexander carefully removed the frame from the wall, his hands steady despite his racing heart. Behind the butterfly display, he found a small USB drive taped securely to the back of the frame. Back in his study, Alexander inserted the drive into his computer. It contained a single video file, dated 3 days before Catherine's disappearance. His wife's face filled the screen, her expression grave. My love, if you're watching this, then Sophia found you. I trust her with my life, and now with yours too. What I discovered in Father's company files, it's worse than we imagined. The environmental studies were just the beginning. There's a network, Alexander, reaching into every major corporation in the city. They're not just falsifying environmental impact reports. They're orchestrating elaborate schemes to bypass regulations, endangering entire communities. Catherine's image leaned closer to the camera. Your friend James isn't who you think he is. He's been reporting our every move to Father. The accident they're planning, it's meant for you, not me. I had to make them think they succeeded with me instead. The evidence is hidden in plain sight, but trust no one except our little messenger. Sophia has a gift, Alexander. She sees what others overlook. Keep her close. The video ended abruptly. Alexander sat back, his mind whirling. James, his head of security for 15 years, a traitor. And Franklin Pierce, his father-in-law, orchestrating industrial-scale corruption? It seemed impossible, yet Catherine's words rang true. She had always been an excellent judge of character. A soft rustle at the door drew his attention. Sophia stood there holding a newspaper clipping. I found this in Mrs. Montgomery's butterfly book, she said, handing it to Alexander. The article detailed a suspicious fire at a chemical plant owned by Pierce Global Investments. The plant had been cited for environmental violations just weeks before the incident destroyed all records on site. There's more, Sophia added, pulling a worn smartphone from her pocket. Mrs. Montgomery gave me this too. She said to keep it. Charged but turned off until I found you. Alexander examined the phone. It was a basic model, the kind that would attract no attention. When he turned it on, he found a single text message queue with an unknown number. The last message sent read, "Follow the butterfly trail Tuesday noon." Today was Tuesday. Looking at Sophia, Alexander saw not just a homeless child, but a crucial ally in unraveling the mystery of Catherine's disappearance. Her presence in his life was no accident. Catherine had chosen her specifically, recognizing something special in this remarkable young girl. Sophia, he said gently, how would you like to go on a butterfly hunt? The girl's eyes lit up with understanding. Mrs. Montgomery said you'd know what that means. She said butterflies always lead the way home. The butterfly trail led them to an unexpected destination, the Natural History Museum's newly opened butterfly conservatory. Alexander watched as Sophia confidently navigated the humid space, her eyes scanning the information plaques with surprising sophistication for her age. "Mrs. Montgomery taught me to read better," she explained, noticing his curious glance. "During our secret meetings, she said knowledge is power, but kindness is strength." They found what they were looking for near a display about monarch migration patterns. A familiar face was waiting: Elena Chen, Dr. Sarah Chen's younger sister, and Catherine's former research assistant at the Environmental Foundation. "Mr. Montgomery," Elena greeted them formally, then smiled warmly at Sophia. "And you must be our butterfly girl. Catherine said you were clever." Elena led them to a private research area away from public view. Once secure, she retrieved a laptop from her bag. "Catherine trusted me with this because I was the one who first noticed the discrepancies in the environmental impact reports. What looked like simple data entry errors revealed a pattern of systematic fraud. The laptop contained detailed records of falsified environmental studies, each linked to major development projects across the city. Companies would receive clean environmental reports despite clear evidence of contamination or ecological damage. The money trail led straight to shell companies owned by Pierce Global Investments. But that's not all, Eleanor continued, pulling up another file. Catherine discovered something even bigger: the Foundation's charitable programs, the ones supposedly helping underprivileged communities. They're being used to launder money. The women's shelter where she met Sophia? It doesn't exist. The address is a front for one of Pierce's shell companies. Sophia spoke up, her voice small but certain. "The shelter is real. It's just not where they say it is. Mrs. Montgomery found the real one by following me one day. That's how we really met." Alexander turned to the child, understanding dawning. "You led Catherine to the truth." Sophia nodded. "I saw things, like the men in suits who would come late at night to the empty building where the shelter was supposed to be. They carried briefcases, but never stayed long. Mrs. Montgomery said I had good instincts. She started asking me to watch other buildings, too." Elena's expression softened. "Catherine mentioned you in her notes, her little observer who could spot patterns adults missed. She was planning to build a real case, gather enough evidence to expose everything without putting anyone at risk. But someone found out," Alexander concluded, the pieces falling into place. "That's why she had to disappear." A notification pinged on Elena's laptop, an email from an encrypted account. The message contained only a series of numbers and a single word: tomorrow. Elena quickly cross-referenced the numbers with a document Catherine had left her. "It's coordinates," she announced, "and a time. Catherine wants to meet, but..." She hesitated, glancing at Sophia. "It's not safe for everyone to go." Alexander understood the implication. The fewer people involved, the less risk of detection. But as he looked at Sophia, he saw the same determination he'd first noticed at the cemetery. This child had been Catherine's trusted messenger, her secret ally in uncovering the truth. She deserved to see this through. "We go together," he decided. "Catherine chose Sophia for a reason. She's part of this now." Sophia's face lit up with a mix of relief and resolve. "Mrs. Montgomery said family stays together. She said when we found you, we'd be a real family." The words hit Alexander like a physical force. In just a few days, this remarkable child had become more than just a messenger or a witness. She had become a beacon of hope, a bridge between him and Catherine, and perhaps something more. Elena began typing rapidly on her laptop. "I'll make the arrangements, but we need to be careful. Pierce Global has eyes everywhere, and they're not the only ones watching. The whole network Catherine uncovered. It's like a web, with strands connecting to every major power player in the city." As they left the museum, Sophia slipped her small hand into Alexander's. The gesture felt natural, as if they'd known each other for years instead of days. Looking down at her, Alexander made a silent promise, not just to Catherine, but to this brave little girl who had risked everything to bring them together. The coordinates led them to an abandoned butterfly sanctuary on the outskirts of the city. The once vibrant greenhouse now stood silent, its glass panels clouded with age and neglect. Alexander parked their car a safe distance away, remembering Catherine's warning about trust. This was Mrs. Montgomery's special place, Sophia whispered, as they approached. She told me about it when we would meet, said it's where she first fell in love with butterflies. The morning fog clung to the ground, creating an ethereal atmosphere around the old structure. Elena had provided them with a secure phone and strict instructions: enter through the east door, follow the blue markings, and trust no one else who might appear. As they neared the entrance, Sophia suddenly grabbed Alexander's sleeve. "Wait," she hissed, pulling him behind a weathered statue. Moments later, a dark SUV cruised past their hiding spot, moving slowly along the perimeter road. "James's men," Alexander muttered, recognizing the vehicle type favored by his security team. "How did they find this place?" "They've been following us since the museum," Sophia revealed, her voice calm despite the situation. "I saw them in the mirrors, just like Mrs. Montgomery taught me to. Check." Alexander stared at the child in amazement. While he had been focused on their destination, this 8-year-old had been actively monitoring their surroundings. Catherine had chosen her messenger well. Once the SUV disappeared around the corner, they slipped inside the greenhouse. The interior was a maze of overgrown plants and broken display cases. Sophia moved with surprising confidence, following nearly invisible blue butterflies painted on the walls. The trail led them to a small office at the back of the building. Inside, they found fresh signs of occupation, a laptop humming quietly on a desk, and a half-empty cup of tea still warm to the touch. "She's here," Sophia breathed, touching the cup gently. "This is her favorite kind, chamomile with honey." A soft click behind them made them both freeze. "I knew you'd figure it out," said a familiar voice. Catherine Montgomery stepped out from behind a partition, looking thinner than Alexander, remembered but very much alive. Her elegant features broke into a warm smile as Sophia ran to her, wrapping small arms around her waist. "My brave little butterfly," Catherine murmured, hugging the child close. Then she looked up at her husband, tears shining in her eyes. "Alexander, I'm so sorry for putting you through this, but I had to protect you both." Alexander crossed the room in 3 strides, enveloping his wife and Sophia in a tight embrace. For a moment they stood together, a tableau of reunion and relief. But Catherine soon pulled back, her expression turning serious. "We don't have much time," she said, moving to the laptop. "Father's network is larger than I initially discovered. It's not just environmental fraud, they're systematically targeting vulnerable communities, using charitable foundations as fronts for money laundering operations." She pulled up a series of documents, revealing a complex web of shell companies and falsified reports. Every major development project in the city for the past 5 years has been compromised. When I confronted Father, he didn't deny it. Instead, he threatened you, Alexander. And then he threatened the children at the real shelter, the ones like Sophia who knew too much. That's why you had to disappear, Alexander realized, to protect everyone while gathering evidence. Catherine nodded. But I couldn't do it alone. I needed someone who could move freely through the city, someone who could observe without being noticed. She smiled at Sophia. Someone pure of heart, whose word would be beyond question when the truth finally came out. Sophia stood straighter, pride evident in her bearing. "I remembered everything, just like you taught me. All the buildings, all the meetings I saw. You did perfectly," Catherine assured her. "And now, thanks to you, we have enough evidence to expose everything. Elena has already begun uploading the files to secure servers worldwide. Once the evidence is public, Father's entire network will collapse." A distant sound made them all tense, car doors slamming, footsteps on gravel. Catherine quickly pressed a small device into Alexander's hand. "The final proof is encoded here. Get it to Sarah Chen. She knows what to do. Take Sophia and go out the back way. I'll lead them away from you." "No," Sophia said firmly, surprising them both. "We stay together. You said family stays together, remember?" Catherine and Alexander exchanged glances, years of unspoken communication passing between them in an instant. The child was right. They had a better chance together than apart. Catherine quickly gathered the essential evidence, while Alexander and Sophia barricaded the office door. The sound of footsteps grew closer, echoing through the empty greenhouse. Using her intimate knowledge of the building's layout, Catherine led them to a concealed passage behind a massive storage cabinet. The original owner was an eccentric butterfly enthusiast, she explained, as they hurried through the narrow corridor. He built secret passages throughout the building to observe his specimens without disturbing them. The passage opened into a vast underground chamber filled with old equipment and dusty display cases. Shafts of light filtered through grates in the ceiling, creating islands of visibility in the darkness. They could hear voices above them now, searching methodically through the greenhouse. "There's another exit through the old ventilation system," Catherine whispered. "It leads to the management building next door." Sophia tugged on Catherine's sleeve. "Wait," she said, her voice urgent but controlled. "Listen." They froze, straining their ears. Through the grates came a familiar voice, James, Alexander's head of security, speaking on his phone. "No sign of them yet, Mr. Pierce, but the car's still warm. They're here somewhere." A pause. "Yes, sir." "Understood. We'll bring them all." As Catherine pulled out her phone, quickly typing a message to Elena. "Everything's uploading to the secure servers now. In 10 minutes, dozens of news organizations will receive anonymized copies of all the evidence." Alexander watched the progress bar on her screen with growing tension. 8 minutes left. 7. 6. A sudden noise above made them duck into the shadows. Through the grate, they could see James's boots passing directly overhead. 5 minutes. Sophia touched Catherine's arm, pointing to a shaft of light falling across the floor. In the beam, they could see dust particles swirling in an unnatural pattern. "There's a draft," she whispered. "The old ventilation system. It's pulling air that way." Catherine squeezed the child's shoulder in silent praise. They began moving carefully toward the source of the draft, using the darkness between light shafts as cover. 4 minutes. They found the ventilation opening behind a stack of crates. Catherine quickly removed the rusted grate while Alexander kept watch. 3 minutes. The shaft was narrow but navigable, sloping upward toward the management building. Sophia went first, her small size an advantage in the tight space. Catherine followed, then Alexander brought up the rear, replacing the grate behind them. 2 minutes. They emerged in a maintenance closet, just as Catherine's phone vibrated. The files had finished uploading. Within seconds, news alerts began popping up on all their devices. The story was breaking across multiple platforms simultaneously. "That's why you chose so many small news outlets instead of one major one," Alexander realized. "They can't shut them all down." Catherine nodded. "Father has influence over the major networks, but he can't control every independent journalist in the country. Once it's out there for good." They could hear confusion erupting in the greenhouse next door as phones began ringing and messages poured in. James's voice rose above the chaos, demanding answers from his team. Sophia peered out the closet door. "The hallway's empty," she reported, "but there's a guard at the main entrance." Catherine smiled. "Good thing we're not going that way." She led them to a service door at the back of the building. "I've had a car waiting here for weeks just in case. The driver is Sarah Chen's brother. He's trustworthy." As they slipped out into the morning sun, Sophia took both their hands. The gesture felt natural, right? As if they had always been meant to be a family. The sound of approaching sirens filled the air as law enforcement responded to the breaking scandal. "Where are we going?" Sophia asked as they approached a nondescript sedan. Catherine squeezed her hand. "Somewhere safe where we can be a proper family while everything gets sorted out. How do you feel about Italy?" Sophia's eyes lit up. "I've always wanted to see real Italian butterflies." As they drove away, Alexander looked at his wife and their newfound daughter. In trying to destroy his family, his father-in-law had inadvertently helped him find something even more precious. A deeper love, a stronger bond, and a little girl who had changed everything with a simple offer of a flower. The Italian countryside rolled past their car window, a patchwork of vineyards and olive groves bathed in golden afternoon light. After 3 weeks of careful travel, using Catherine's meticulously planned escape route, they had finally arrived in Tuscany. Their destination was a small monastery, that doubled as a butterfly conservation center, run by an order of nuns dedicated to environmental preservation. Sophia pressed her face against the window, taking in the scenic beauty of the rolling hills. She had adapted to their journey with remarkable resilience, treating each new country and temporary safe house as an adventure. Catherine had used their transit time to begin homeschooling her, while Alexander taught her basic Italian phrases. "Look," Sophia exclaimed, pointing to a cluster of buildings nestled among cypress trees. "Is that where we're going?" Catherine smiled, reaching back to squeeze the girl's hand. "Yes, that's the monastery of Santa Farfalla. Sister Maria Teresa has been expecting us." As they approached the monastery gates, Alexander reflected on how much had changed since that foggy morning at Sterling Hill Cemetery. The evidence Catherine had released had sent shockwaves through the corporate world. Franklin Pierce had fled the country, but his network was unraveling rapidly as former allies turned on each other to save themselves. The monastery courtyard was a haven of tranquility, with butterflies fluttering freely among the carefully tended flowers. Sister Maria Teresa, a serene woman in her 60s, greeted them warmly. "Welcome to your new home, at least for now," she said in lightly accented English. "It's beautiful," Sophia breathed, watching a swallowtail butterfly dance past. "Just like Mrs. Montgomery's sanctuary, but bigger." "Come," Sister Maria Teresa said, smiling at Sophia's enthusiasm. "Let me show you to your quarters. We've prepared the old gardener's cottage for your family. It's private, but close enough to the monastery for safety." The cottage was a charming two-story structure covered in climbing roses. Inside, they found comfortable furnishings and, to their surprise, a fully equipped study filled with books and scientific equipment. "I thought you might like to continue your environmental research here," Sister Maria Teresa told Catherine. "We have quite an extensive database on European butterfly species, and," she added, turning to Sophia, "we have a wonderful education program for children interested in nature conservation." Later that evening, as they sat in their new garden, watching the sunset, Sophia brought out a small package wrapped in tissue paper. "I've been saving this," she said, carefully unwrapping it to reveal a pressed wildflower, the same one she had offered Alexander at the cemetery. "I picked two that morning," she explained. "I gave one to Mr. Montgomery, but I kept this one. Mrs. Montgomery told me that sometimes the smallest gestures can change everything." Catherine touched the dried flower gently. "She's right. That simple act of kindness opened the door to exposing years of corruption and bringing our family together." "Speaking of family," Alexander said, pulling out a folder he had been keeping safe throughout their journey. "Sophia, Catherine, and I have been talking. We know the past few weeks have been chaotic, but we've grown to love you very much. If you're willing, we'd like to make our family official." Sophia's eyes widened as she realized what he meant. "You want to adopt me? Really?" "Only if you want us to," Catherine added quickly. "We know you've been through a lot, and we don't want to pressure you." Sophia's response was to throw her arms around both of them, happy tears streaming down her face. "I already feel like you're my real parents," she whispered. "I've never had a real family before." Sister Maria Teresa, who had been discreetly watching from the monastery portico, smiled and made a note in her diary. The legal paperwork for the adoption had already been prepared, waiting only for Sophia's consent. The monastery had a long history of helping families make new beginnings, and this one seemed particularly blessed. As night fell over the Tuscan hills, the small family remained in their garden, planning their future together. Sophia had already started sketching designs for a butterfly garden of their own, while Catherine described the research projects they could work on together. Alexander listened contentedly, occasionally adding his own suggestions for future family adventures. The monastery settled into a peaceful routine as summer progressed. Each morning, Sophia would join the nuns in tending to the butterfly gardens, absorbing their knowledge of conservation and ecology. Her natural gift for observation, honed during her time on the streets, made her an excellent student of lepidopterology, the study of butterflies and moths. Catherine had transformed one corner of their cottage into a research station, working with Sister Maria Teresa to document the monastery's unique butterfly populations. Alexander, meanwhile, managed his remaining business interests remotely, focusing on transforming Montgomery Enterprises into a leader in sustainable development. One bright morning, as Sophia helped collect data on butterfly migration patterns, a familiar face appeared at the monastery gates. Dr. Sarah Chen had arrived for her promised visit, bringing news from New York. "The investigation is proceeding exactly as we hoped," she reported as they gathered in the cottage's living room. "Elna's evidence was irrefutable. The authorities have frozen all of Pierce Global's assets, and several key executives have agreed to testify." "And James?" Alexander asked, thinking of his former head of security. "Cooperating fully in exchange for leniency, he's provided detailed information about Franklin's entire operation." Sarah paused, glancing at Sophia, who was pretending to focus on her butterfly drawings while clearly listening intently. The real breakthrough came from the shelter children's testimonies. Their statements about the suspicious activities they witnessed matched Sophia's observations perfectly. Sophia looked up from her drawing. "Are they okay? The other kids from the shelter?" "They're doing very well," Sarah assured her. "The shelter has been reopened under new management, with proper funding and oversight. Your friends there ask about you often." Catherine squeezed Sophia's hand. "Maybe we can help set up a similar program here in Italy. There must be children in nearby towns who could benefit from learning about butterfly conservation." Sophia's face lit up at the suggestion. "Could we?" Sister Maria Teresa said teaching others is the best way to preserve knowledge. "Speaking of teaching," Sarah said, reaching into her bag, "I brought something for you." She pulled out a leather-bound journal with a butterfly embossed on the cover. "This is a special scientific journal for recording your observations. Catherine tells me you've become quite the expert." Sophia handled the journal reverently, running her fingers over the butterfly design. "It's just like the ones Mrs. Mom uses," she said, testing out the new word with a shy smile. The term caught Catherine by surprise, happy tears welling in her eyes. It was the first time Sophia had called her Mom. Alexander wrapped an arm around his wife's shoulders, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "You know," Sarah said, watching the family's emotional moment with satisfaction, "when Catherine first told me about her plan to expose Pierce Global's corruption, I thought she was taking an impossible risk. But she insisted that sometimes the most powerful changes come from unexpected sources." She smiled at Sophia. She said she just needed to find the right messenger. Sophia opened her new journal, smoothing the first blank page. "Sister Maria, Teresa says butterflies are symbols of transformation," she said thoughtfully. "Like how a caterpillar becomes something completely different and beautiful. Just like our family," Alexander added, pulling both his wife and daughter close. "We've all been transformed by this journey." As evening approached, Sarah joined them for dinner in the cottage garden. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by Sophia's excited descriptions of her latest butterfly discoveries and Catherine's plans for expanding the monastery's conservation program. Looking around the table at her newfound family, Sophia felt a deep sense of belonging she had never known in her years on the streets. The butterfly journal lay open beside her plate, its pages waiting to be filled with new observations and discoveries. But more importantly, its presence represented something greater, the promise of a future filled with love, purpose, and the endless possibilities that come with transformation. Autumn painted the Tuscan landscape in rich oranges and deep reds, mirroring the colors of the monastery's resident butterflies. 3 months had passed since their arrival, and the cottage had become a true home. Sophia's adoption was officially finalized, marked by a small celebration in the monastery's garden, where Sister Maria Teresa herself had blessed their new family. The morning began like any other, with Sophia recording observations in her now well-worn journal. She had developed her own system of notation, combining scientific accuracy with artistic sketches that impressed even the monastery's most experienced lepidopterists. But today was special. They were expecting an important visitor. Elena Chen arrived just before noon, carrying a thick portfolio and wearing a triumphant smile. After ensuring they were securely inside the cottage, She spread several documents across the dining table. "It's done," she announced. "Pierce Global Investments has been completely dismantled. The environmental protection agencies have taken control of all the compromised development sites, and restoration work has already begun in most locations." Alexander studied the papers, noting the familiar names of former business associates now facing serious charges. "And the shelter programs?" "Being reorganized under a new charitable foundation," Elena confirmed. "Sarah is overseeing the transition personally." "But that's not why I'm here." She pulled out a final document, placing it carefully before them. "This is the last piece of the puzzle, Franklin Pierce's personal computer files." Catherine leaned forward, her expression tense. "You found them?" Elena nodded. "Hidden in a private server in Switzerland. He thought they were secure, but he didn't count on his own security team turning against him. The files confirm everything, including his original plan for Alexander." Sophia, who had been quietly sketching butterflies nearby, moved closer to her parents. "Is it safe now? Can we go home?" Alexander and Catherine exchanged glances. Home. The word held new meaning now. The Montgomery mansion in New York seemed like a lifetime ago, belonging to different people who lived different lives. "Actually," Catherine said, pulling out some sketches of her own, "we've been thinking about that. The monastery owns some land just down the valley. Sister Maria Teresa has offered to let us build there, a permanent research station for butterfly conservation with living quarters attached." Sophia's eyes widened. "We'd still be near the monastery? Near my butterflies?" "And," Alexander added, "we could establish a foundation to help other children like you, combining education with environmental conservation. Give them the same opportunity to transform their lives that you had." Elena smiled, watching Sophia process this information. "I think that's exactly what the world needs right now. More butterflies, more second chances, and more people willing to stand up for what's right." Later that afternoon, Sister Maria Teresa took them to see the proposed building site. It was a gentle slope overlooking a small lake, perfect for creating graduated gardens that would attract different species of butterflies. Sophia immediately began planning where various plants should go, her scientific knowledge now matching her natural instincts. "You know," Catherine said, watching her daughter expertly identify optimal locations for different butterfly habitats, "when I first met Sophia, I saw something special in her, a resilience, an ability to see truth where others missed it, but I never imagined how much she would teach us." Alexander nodded, remembering that foggy morning in the cemetery. "She taught us that family isn't about blood or background. It's about choice, choosing to trust, to protect, to love. And choosing to believe in butterflies," Sophia added, rejoining them with her journal full of new notes. "Sister Maria Teresa says butterflies remind us that beautiful things can come from unexpected places." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across their future home site, Catherine pulled out her camera to document the moment. Sophia posed proudly between her parents, holding up her journal with its detailed drawings. Behind them, a monarch butterfly danced on the evening breeze, its orange wings glowing like stained glass in the fading light. Winter came softly to the monastery, bringing cool rains that nourished the dormant gardens. Inside the cottage, Sophia sat at her new desk, carefully organizing her research for an upcoming presentation. The Montgomery Foundation for Environmental Education was officially launching next month, and she would be helping to introduce their first group of student conservationists. "Remember," Catherine said, reviewing Sophia's presentation notes, "these children are just like you were. They just need someone to believe in them." Sophia nodded, adding another sketch to her materials. "I'm going to tell them about the butterfly effect, how one small change can transform everything." The transformation of their own lives was evident in every corner of the cottage. Alexander's former office walls, once covered in financial charts, now displayed Sophia's scientific illustrations alongside Catherine's research papers. The living room had become a casual classroom where Sophia practiced her presentations for an audience. 12 patient nuns. Elena sent another update, Alexander announced, entering with his tablet. The Foundation's first satellite program is ready to launch in New York. Sarah's already identified 20 children from the shelter who want to participate. Catherine smiled, remembering her own secret volunteer work at the shelter. And the new environmental oversight committees, all in place, Alexander confirmed. Every major development project now requires independent verification from multiple agencies. Pierce Global's old network is completely disbanded. Sophia looked up from her work. What about Grandfather Pierce? Did they find him? A shadow crossed Catherine's face, but she answered honestly, "No, sweetheart, he's still hiding somewhere, but he can't hurt anyone anymore. All his money and power are gone." Besides, Alexander added, sitting next to Sophia, he gave us something precious, without meaning to. If he hadn't forced us to go into hiding, we might never have become a family. Sophia considered this, then opened her journal to a fresh page. I want to add that to my presentation, about how sometimes bad things can lead to good changes, like how caterpillars have to struggle to break out of their chrysalis to become strong butterflies. Their conversation was interrupted by Sister Maria Teresa arriving with architectural plans for the new research station. Construction would begin in spring, timed to coincide with the butterfly migration season. The plans included a special wing dedicated to education and rehabilitation programs for children from disadvantaged backgrounds. Sophia's ideas have influenced the design significantly, Sister Maria Teresa explained, pointing out features that would make the facility welcoming to children while maintaining scientific rigor. Her perspective as both a researcher and someone who understands these children's needs is invaluable. Looking at the plans, Sophia felt a surge of pride. Her suggestions about creating safe, nurturing spaces while incorporating elements of discovery and adventure had been taken seriously. The building would include a butterfly garden visible from every classroom, reinforcing the connection between personal growth and environmental stewardship. "We're thinking of calling it the Chrysalis Center," Catherine said, watching her daughter's reaction, "because it's a place of transformation." "Like how I transformed from a street kid into a butterfly scientist?" Sophia asked, her eyes twinkling. "And how we transformed from a broken couple into a complete family," Alexander added, pulling both his girls close. "Sister." Maria Teresa smiled at the family tableau before her. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "in all my years at this monastery, I've never seen a more perfect example of the butterfly effect. One small act of kindness in a cemetery led to the exposure of corruption, the protection of the environment, and the creation of a program that will help countless children find their wings." Sophia touched the dried wildflower she kept pressed in her journal, the one she had offered to Alexander that foggy morning that seemed so long ago. "Mum always says that true strength comes from kindness," she said. "Like how butterflies look delicate but can fly thousands of miles to find their home." As evening settled over the monastery, the family gathered in their garden. The winter air was cool but clear, perfect for stargazing. Sophia pointed out constellations she had learned from Sister Maria Teresa, weaving them into stories about transformation and hope. "You know what I've learned," she said, snuggling between her parents. "Sometimes the most beautiful patterns are the ones we don't expect. Like how a little girl with a flower can find her perfect family in the middle of a storm." Spring burst into life across the Tuscan countryside, bringing with it the grand opening of the Chrysalis Center. The modern glass building seemed to emerge organically from the hillside, its butterfly wing-shaped solar panels gleaming in the morning sun. Gardens in various stages of growth surrounded the facility, each designed to attract different species of butterflies. Sophia stood at the podium, her heart racing with excitement rather than nervousness. Before her sat an audience that represented everything their family had worked for: environmental scientists, social workers, former shelter children, and a group of nuns who had become extended family over the past year. "Welcome to the Chrysalis Center," she began, her voice clear and confident. "My name is Sophia Montgomery, and my story begins with a flower and a choice." She paused, making eye contact with her parents in the front row. "I was 8 years old, living on the streets, when I offered a flower to a sad man in a cemetery. That small gesture changed everything. not just for me, but for hundreds of other children who will find their wings here. The presentation continued with Sophia explaining the center's unique approach to environmental education and social transformation. She highlighted the special features she had helped design: comfortable dormitory spaces that felt like homes, classrooms that opened directly into butterfly gardens, and research areas where children could conduct their own scientific observations. Every butterfly species has its own journey, she explained, showing slides of various migration patterns. Just like every child who comes here will have their own path. What matters is that they have a safe place to transform and people who believe in them. Catherine watched her daughter with pride, remembering the small, brave girl who had carried her message in the darkest of times. Sophia had grown into a poised young scientist, but she had never lost her compassion or her ability to see the extraordinary in the ordinary. After the presentation, as guests toured the facility, Elena approached with news. "The first group of students arrives next week," she reported. 20 children from shelters across Europe, all eager to start their butterfly research. "And the New York program?" Alexander asked, still keeping tabs on their homeland. "Flourishing," Elena smiled. "Sarah says they've had to expand twice already. Turns out there are a lot of kids who dream of becoming butterfly scientists." Sophia was leading a group of visitors through her favorite part of the center, the Transformation Gallery. Here, she had created a multimedia exhibition documenting various stories of change: butterflies emerging from chrysalises, endangered, habitats being restored, and children like herself finding new paths in life. "This is where we'll record new stories," she explained, pointing to blank walls waiting to be filled. "Every child who comes through our program will add their own transformation journey." Sister Maria Teresa, watching from a quiet corner, made the sign of the cross in blessing. In all her years of service, she had never seen such a perfect blend of scientific rigor and spiritual transformation. The center embodied everything her order had always believed about the connection between nature's beauty and human potential. Later, that evening, as the family walked through the quiet building, Sophia stopped at a special display case. Inside, protected by glass, lay the dried wildflower from the cemetery, the catalyst that had started everything. Beside it was her first scientific journal, open to a page containing pressed butterfly wings and careful notes in a child's handwriting. "I've been thinking," she said, turning to her parents. "Maybe Grandfather Pierce didn't really lose everything. Maybe he just couldn't see what real wealth looks like." Catherine wrapped an arm around her daughter's shoulders. "What does real wealth look like, sweetheart?" Sophia gestured to the building. Around them, to the gardens visible through the windows, to the family standing together. This, all of this, the chance to help others transform, the opportunity to create something beautiful from something broken. Through the glass walls, they could see the sun setting behind the monastery, casting long shadows across the butterfly gardens. In the twilight, the solar panels shifted colors like iridescent wings, promising power for tomorrow's discoveries. 1 year to the day after the Chrysalis Center's opening, the Montgomery family hosted a special ceremony. The center's first class of young conservationists was graduating, each student having completed their own research project on butterfly species and habitat preservation. The gallery walls were now filled with their stories, their scientific discoveries, and their dreams for the future. Sophia, now 10, stood among her parents as they greeted guests arriving for the celebration. She had grown taller, more confident, but her eyes still held that same mix of wisdom and wonder that had first drawn Catherine to her on that fateful night under the bridge. The ceremony began with an unexpected surprise: a video message from Dr. Sarah Chen in New York. The screen showed dozens of children in similar centers around the world, all wearing butterfly-themed lab coats designed by Sophia. "The butterfly effect you started has spread its wings across continents," Sarah announced. "From New York to Tokyo, from Sydney to Sao Paulo, children who once had no hope are discovering their potential through environmental science. And it all began with a little girl and a wildflower." Catherine stepped up to the podium next, holding a book, Sophia's first published work, a guide for young scientists titled "Finding Your Wings, A Child's Guide to Butterfly Conservation." The book combined scientific accuracy with Sophia's unique perspective on transformation and hope. "When I first went into hiding," Catherine began, "I thought I was protecting my family by staying away. What I didn't realize was that my family wasn't complete yet. It took a child's courage and compassion to show me that sometimes the things we think are ending are really just beginning." Alexander joined them, carrying a special display case. Inside was a newly discovered butterfly species found in the monastery gardens by one of their students. The scientific community had allowed Sophia to name it. "I'm calling it Papilio transformatio," Sophia announced to the assembled crowd, "because transformation is the most beautiful natural process we know. It reminds us that change is possible, that beauty can emerge from darkness, and that even the smallest creatures can make the biggest impact." Sister Maria Teresa presented each graduating student with a special journal, modeled after Sophia's original. "Remember," she told them, "you are not just scientists. You are guardians of hope, protectors of beauty, and proof that every life can transform into something extraordinary." As the celebration continued into the evening, the family slipped away to their private garden. Sophia had arranged a surprise of her own, a butterfly release ceremony. Each member of their extended family, including Elena, Sarah, who had flown in secretly for the occasion, and the monastery's nuns held a small container. "These butterflies were raised by our first class of students," Sophia explained. "Each one represents a dream they're sending into the world." On her signal, dozens of butterflies took flight, their wings catching the golden light of sunset. The sight moved Catherine to tears, not of sadness this time, but of pure joy. Alexander held her close as they watched their daughter guide the younger children in tracking the butterflies' flight patterns. "You know," Sophia said later, as they sat together in their garden, "I used to think my story was about a flower that changed everything. But now I know it's really about love, the kind of love that sees possibility in unexpected places." Catherine touched the locket she wore, which contained the dried wildflower from the cemetery. "You taught us that, sweetheart. You showed us that real family is built on choices, choosing to trust, to believe, to transform together, and choosing to share that transformation with others," Alexander added, watching the last butterflies disappear into the twilight. Sophia opened her journal, not her first one, which was now a treasured museum piece, but her current research diary. On its pages, scientific observations mingled with personal reflections, creating a testament to the power of combining heart and mind, science and compassion. "Every butterfly in our gardens has a story," she wrote, "just like every child who comes to the Chrysalis Center. Some stories begin with a flower, others with a dream. But they all share one truth: transformation is always possible, and love is the most powerful catalyst of all." Fim da Historia. Dear listeners, we hope Sophia's journey of transformation has touched your hearts. To continue experiencing such emotionally captivating stories, we've prepared a special playlist of equally moving narratives. Find it by clicking the link to your left. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give the video a like. Every day we bring you unique stories that explore life's complexity and the power of transformation. Join us in the comments section to share your thoughts and emotions about Sophia and her butterfly effect. Remember, sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can create the most beautiful transformations in our world.